Yeah, this thing, I don't know, does it qualify as an ukulele? It's more like a guitar.
So we're joined today with David Ingalls, the maker of Ono Ukulele. Thank you for coming down, David.
It's great to be here again. It's been a while,
Yeah.
since before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Has it really been that long?
I was last here in the fall of 19.
You're coming over to visit Maui?
Yep.
Gonna go hang out in Hana?
Yeah, I understand that's a little bit of a off the beaten path kind
Nice
of place, but
party town? No.
yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, Corey, what are some of the qualities of Ono that you enjoy?
One is the very robust tone that you get. A lot of it is from the, call it non-traditional build, which allows you to get this kind of tone that, when you first hear it, it'll just really open your eyes like, wow, I didn't know an ukulele could sound like that. And it totally can. You just, you have to really just engineer it in a different way to really transform it into something different.
Yeah, I really admire the evolution of Ono ukuleles because they started out sounding good, and obviously this isn't a hobby for you; it's more of a mission, or it's
An obsession.
yeah, something you think about when you probably shouldn't. But yeah, there's so many different aspects to design and tone. What made you go from more of a standard build back in the day? Because we were getting your ukes back then.
Yeah. Since I started doing this, I was always kind of impressed by the fact that these are pretty small instruments. They don't have a lot of top area, which is what you need to make the sound. And people deal with that in various ways, and everybody knows there are a number of bracing systems. And I, from the outset, adopted really the most conventional plan, which is 2 transverse braces, one above the sound hole and the other below the sound hole, and then fan braces that go south toward the tail of the instrument. Usually 3 fan braces for a tenor and 2 for a concert and 5 for a baritone. And that's a very standard method that's been very successful over time, both in terms of tone and in terms of durability. And at some point, this has been about more than 3 years ago, I got to wondering about what's really going on with those braces. What are the braces really doing? So we know that you can tune the sound of the instrument by changing the size of the braces, the dimensions, and exactly where they're located, and the way in which they're trimmed, whether they're tall and skinny or wider and less tall, and all sorts of little things that you work with to come up with the sound of the instrument that you'd like to have it be, and you develop that over time. But I got asking myself, what's that really all about in structural terms? So what I did was I made up a set of sides with a heel block and a tail block, and attached a neck, and just no linings, no back, no top. Set that on the workbench, and you pull up on the neck a little bit, because what you're doing with bracing, a large part of what you're doing is keeping the thing together, keeping it from folding up under string tension, which is an issue with all stringed instruments that's dealt with in one way or another. And what you see when you do that is it was really striking to me. The sides deflect in and out at various points as you raise the neck and simulate the effect of string tension. And so what you can see when you do that is there's a really good reason why we have those transverse braces, one above and one below the sound hole. because that's where most of that in and out movement occurs when you apply that pressure. And so I asked myself if there was some other way of dealing with that to accommodate the need to keep the neck from rotating up under tension. And early on when I started building, one of the instruments I had was a Compass Rose by Rick Turner, who is a very famous luthier who did lots of things with lots of kinds of instruments over a career of about 60 years, I think, in all. He passed away a few years ago. And one of the things that was interesting about the one I had is it had a side sound hole, and this is a tenor, of course. And the brace, the upper brace, the one north of the sound hole on that instrument was really, really heavy. It wasn't tapered toward its top like most of them are. It was in section, it was rectangular, and it had a carbon fiber overlay on the underside. And so I asked myself, well, why would he do that? And then it occurred to me that that's probably because he perceived that that point of the top was someplace that really had to be strengthened a lot. Because when you do the experiment that I did of laying out the sides and the neck, the point where that brace is the point where there's a lot of deflection of the sides when you bring up the simulation of string tension. And so I got to thinking about that, and then I looked at some other work that he had done over time, and he had come up with this structure he called the flying buttress bracing. And that was picked up by a number of guitar builders, and you can find them out there. There are a number of builders who do that, but none that I have been able to find in the ukulele world. And so using that mock-up, I mocked up these, what are called the flying buttress braces, which go from the top of the heel block and downward toward the back, and they intersect at the point a little bit beyond the waist. And
there's blocks on the waist of the side, right?
Yeah,
or
so,
around that area.
And that's to take what happens when those braces are in place is that as you apply tension to the neck and you make it want to roll up, there's force that's directly down toward those anchor points that are at the bottom, the back, the intersection of the back and the sides, just beyond the waist. And so what that does is when you see it, it's really pretty obvious that those structures are resisting the rotation of the neck in a very efficient way. And so I built an instrument using that and without any transverse braces. And lo and behold, it works. I've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now, and it's been successful structurally. And what it also does is that it frees up the top to vibrate. In a conventional bracing system, if you hold the instrument by the neck and you tap with your finger from the tail up toward the sound hole, the top goes essentially dead below the transverse brace that's below the sound hole. So the first transverse brace that you come to is so stiff, because it's structurally necessary, that the top isn't vibrating and making sound. With the system that I've been using, you can tap almost up to the tail block and you're still getting vibration in the top. So what that says to me is that I have more area of the top working than I would with the conventional bracing system that I was using. And that seems to translate into sustain and into the ability of the player to add a little more volume by putting more energy into the strings in the process of playing. So you can make it loud if you want, but it still plays softly. And that...
You were doing cantilever necks, though, from way before that.
Well, that came from Rick Turner too, because
Right.
when I started doing this, I had several pretty nice
But do you,
instruments. That I,
in retrospect, do you think that was irrelevant with a transverse brace?
yes, pretty much. Did it help a little bit to create a little more ability of the top in the upper bout to vibrate? That's only a maybe, because what I realize now is that those transverse braces pretty much deaden the top. But I always did it because actually it had some advantages in building, because it gives you a way of carefully adjusting the height of the strings at the saddle. When I make necks, if this is the neck and this is the portion of the neck that butts up against the back of the body, if you vary this angle, it varies the tilt of the strings with respect to the top of the instrument. And so by trimming the face of the neck that butts up against the body, you can adjust the height of the strings at the saddle, which is an important point.
You're talking about setting the neck? I mean, that's kind of the same, though.
Yes, it is. But it's another way of doing it that's it's convenient, and it doesn't involve changing the sides.
And so, and then maybe a little bit around that same period of time, maybe you were doing it already, you started experimenting with laminating woods.
Yes, and that's the outgrowth of another theory about instruments. That is, people have their own points of view. It'll never all be resolved, but some builders prefer to make what's called an active back, where the back picks up the vibrations of the air inside the body and contributes to the totality of the sound and tone of the instrument. And the other side of that coin is the people who feel that the side should be a little more rigid and massive, so that energy isn't bled off from the top to the sides and then the back. So then the top is the only thing that's vibrating and moving. And both of those systems do work. There's no question about that. And this is a controversy that has always been out there in the guitar world, as far as I can tell. It's easy to find people discussing both sides of that proposition. And early on, I decided to go with the one rather than the other. And I don't think it's more valid than the other, but it does work. And that is you try and make the top the focus of the sound production of the instrument and optimize for that.
Yeah, I know, like, if you go shopping for drums, typically the higher amounts of ply will give a louder sound. So like a 25 ply snare is gonna like snap like a lot louder than
Yeah.
a 15. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's all different theories to go. I mean, to me, that it does seem like stiffening the sides is gonna add more power. I guess there's arguments to be made as to like what the total tonal character is
Sure.
and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, but you know, unlike the one Corey has, so this top is 2 pieces of spruce. Obviously, it would have cost you less in time and same in money or less to just use 1 piece of spruce. So, and then also people think of lamination as like a cheap instrument type thing. So explain why you're doing what you're doing and how it's different.
Yeah. Well, with the less expensive instruments, what at least I've seen is that they use a very inexpensive wood for the bulk of the thickness. Let's say you're doing laminated sides, and there's just a very thin veneer on the outside, and that is one way of doing it, but it's not the better way of doing laminations. What I do is I use good tone woods for the layers of lamination, and it's a little bit thicker than a one thickness bent side would be, but it gives you more mass, and the
But on the top.
on the top also, one of the reasons for doing that is when I take away the braces, I want to make sure that the top stays conformed to its shape. Some instruments use a flat top and some use a top that has a little bit of a convexity to it. I've always been in the convexity camp, and when you make a top out of a single layer, that convexity is forced to the top by putting a little bit of curve on the braces that you glue to the top, and it forces it into a little bit of a domed shape. What I've done is to do it with 2 layers, as you said, and it's glued in a convex dish, and it doesn't detract from the tone of the top, which is really interesting. I had built a lot of standard tops, and you become accustomed to tapping them and listening to what you've got, and that's part of what guides you in terms of the dimensions of the bracing and the thickness of your tops. It's not something that can be quantified. It's something that you have to listen for and learn to do. And I found that the 2-layer laminated tops have the same quality of sound. There's nothing that's given up by doing that.
So when you're tapping them afterwards, you could tap them next to a solid piece, and it's going to give you about the same ring, or
yes, and of course it depends.
Like with your eyes closed, you don't think you could tell?
Probably not. It'd be hard to. There's so many differences, even if you're talking about
from
tapping,
piece to piece. Right?
Yeah, 5 different tops that are made exactly the same.
Sure.
The guy who got me started on building, this is 13 years ago or so, said to me, a good exercise to do for a beginning builder is to build 3 instruments out of all of the same wood, same piece of wood, and make them as exactly alike as you can make them, and then try and figure out why they all sound different. And there's some truth to that, is that the differences can be subtle, even using the same approaches and materials. The trick is to be able to hear what you're doing as you're doing it and make that instrument come out the way you think it should.
Yeah. Each piece of wood is different too.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of builders will make those final adjustments just using their flex. And I mean, I don't know how much you can really trust with tapping and that sort of thing. But I mean, I think you can tell a lot about what's going on from that end.
Well, and so you have to ask the question, is there some way of better than tapping to do that? And the answer seems to be not really, because people study how instruments vibrate and how they make certain tones, and there's a lot of depth to acoustical science, but it doesn't seem to have resulted in information that you can really use at the builder's level to make things better. It's still all about. It's
like when I'm cooking a steak, I just know that feel. If you if you poke it, you can kind of it's there.
Yeah, and that's really
that's the science we're working with here.
Yeah, that's where the art comes into the craft.
Yeah, because you've been after this thing that I am as well. It's like, how can you get the biggest sound possible without sacrificing structural stability?
Yeah.
Inside of yours now, if I remember correctly, it's almost like an arch top. Just has like the 2 braces running along, right? There's no transverse braces at all.
Not at all. And that's probably an okay analogy. I think the experts in building archtop guitars would probably have some thoughts about that.
It's
really
and there's all
different,
kinds of different ways they've done that, and
But as far as I can tell, you've got to have the longitudinal braces, because the string tension wants to make the bridge. If this is where the peg head is, the bridge wants to rotate because of the string tension.
Why have you built one without them?
No, but I wouldn't dare. That'd be stupid, because it would break.
Yeah.
You'd have to have a really thick top, and then it wouldn't sound good. And as you know, what that results in is that maybe a little bit of bellying in the top, north of the bridge.
Right.
And in the ukulele world and in the guitar world, a little bit is tolerated as long as it it's a little bit, and it
Well, then
doesn't
your
get
bridge
worse.
starts coming up, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
deal with those issues.
But you can see some good instruments that have a little
a
belly.
little bit of belly, yeah.
It's-
That's probably some of the best sounders, actually.
Yeah, well, it's because the tops are thin, probably.
Yeah.
But you need those longitudinal braces to, otherwise the thing would probably
Yeah.
self-destruct pretty
It
quickly.
probably sounds better too, giving the sound some direction. On cheaper laminates, a lot of times they get away with no braces, but it's like there's no focus to the sound. It kind of just
Yeah.
sounds like it's, yeah. You also, we recently got a couple other instruments from you. I'm going to go put a different one in Corey's hands. Oh, first of all, did you mention how this is in B flat tuning?
How it's
I don't think Corey mentioned it's in B flat tuning right now. It's one step down.
Is it the Byron Yasui tuning?
Yeah, I've heard you say that, and of course I know who he is and that he's a deeply respected musician in Hawaii, and I'm just wondering exactly what that's all about. Is he really a proponent of the lower tuning for tenors?
I forgot what the reasoning was, but he would use the step. Was it
Where's
a whole step
tenor?
right there? Oh, and here Joel put it in here. Sorry.
But no, he wouldn't call it his tuning, probably.
No, I mean I refer to it as that because he's one of the main ones to use it because it's was that F B flat D, and then what was the bottom string?
G.
G.
So we were talking about this before we started recording, but you would suggest a different string set for the standard tuning on these long scale tenors.
Yeah, I've used a standard concert set, which comes in at about the right tension when you tune it down a step, because you've gone to a 1 inch longer scale, and that works out in terms of string tension. But probably tuning it up is not with the standard string set is probably not the best idea in the long term.
I would argue with that.
Well,
I think.
what did you risk the with this string set and GCA tuning? It would break a little easier.
The strings would break. I don't know. Like when I feel yours, it doesn't feel like they're on the edge.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's too
Yeah.
high. Which,
And
know-
also you can like sometimes if it's too high of tension, you start to get thuddy sounds. I don't hear that coming out when we tune these up to GCA.
yeah, they sound fantastic.
But it does get pretty tight. I mean, the tension is pretty hard on your fingers, and yeah, it's more likely to break at that string length. And the builder's saying not to do that. So
We
void your warranty.
Though.
No, but if you put on a set of like Uke Logic soft tension, I
That'll
think,
level everything out, so.
I think it would be perfect.
I've done that.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of choosing the correct strings.
Right.
But
right.
I remember we did tune up a
Yeah,
couple.
that one
that
I
were-
think we tuned up to GCA when you
And
did
it's
the sound
fine.
sample.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, at your own risk and desire. I mean,
Just have backup strings.
some people go with really heavy tension strings, even on a 17-inch scale. Sometimes I'm like, dang, this is. But
Yeah.
like GHS has a set. It's like cables.
That's the training set. You want to get your fingers as hard.
Or
As-
see
as
if your
possible.
uke will explode.
Yeah, it's amazing how different it is in this tuning compared to standard tuning. It feels like a completely different instrument. Not in any bad way at all.
Sorry, Corey, before you start on that one, I wanted to get kind of if you could run down the features of that instrument on the listing for us.
Okay. Well, the neck is pretty conventional. I almost always use Honduras mahogany because it's fairly light and has excellent structural qualities. The top here, as you said, is 2 layers of Adirondack spruce, and it's about the same thickness as a single layer top would be, but the difference is that it's molded with the convex shape, and so bracing isn't required to maintain the shape of the top. One thing that comes up is some builders would say you shouldn't add the weight of the glue to do this because it could be could have a poor effect on the sound of the top. What I found is that it isn't really true. What I'm doing here is I've weighed this out any number of times. The amount of glue that is left after the top is glued together is 2 grams more than the pieces of wood without the glue. I've weighed that many times. Use the glue very, very sparingly. And I'm using an epoxy that's viscous enough that it doesn't soak into the wood. And when I apply it to the 2 pieces before I put them together, I scrape off every bit of epoxy that I can with a hard edge scraper. And then when it's put into its dish mold under high vacuum pressure, the pressure is what brings the wood together. It doesn't need any amount of glue. None squeezes out the sides. None comes through the grain. It's just enough to hold it together. Now, and that 2 grams, that's against a weight of the top of, depends on the wood you use, but maybe around 70 grams or so. So the 2 grams turns out to be insignificant as far as my ears can tell. And it does have the advantage of maintaining the curvature of the top very well. The sides and back of this instrument are Bolivian rosewood, which is actually a term that covers more than one species. There are several things that are known as Bolivian rosewood, and there are different names too. It can be Pau Ferro or Morado, and it's all similar wood, although this is a kind of figure and a look that I've never seen in anything else that was called Bolivian rosewood. So I sent a sample of it off to a lab that the U.S. Forest Service has, and they tolerate people inquiring about wood if they don't. I guess you don't overuse the service and do it too much. But I got a very quick response, and a scientist got back to me and told me that this wood is in fact the genus of wood that is generally called Bolivian rosewood. Species indeterminate, but that's basically what it is. It's a hardwood from Central and South America that has very good tonal characteristics. It has a very nice tap tone when it's in cut form into back and sides. And this particular board happens to have very nice coloring and figure. The inner layer of the back and the sides is maple, which is also an excellent tone wood. I don't use the throwaway wood on the inside. I try to use a wood that has good tonal properties because you don't want to somehow use a wood that is going to be more deadening or absorbent of sound. You want a wood that does what tone wood is supposed to do. So that is something that I do keep a careful eye on. The sides are laminated under vacuum pressure also. I use molds that are half of the top, and each side the pieces are cut to the correct thickness, and then glue is applied to the 2 faces, and they're laid over the that mold, and it's put in a vacuum bag, and pressure is applied. So they squeeze right down onto the form. So you end up with sides that are always the correct shape and have the right curves, which you can do with manual bending of sides. There are plenty of experts who do a very good job of that, but this is one way of getting the shape I want, and still having the advantage of a somewhat thicker side that has more mass, that promotes that idea we were talking about before of isolating the energy in the top to the top and letting it make the sound, rather than letting the whole instrument become involved in the process.
So the one that Corey has right now?
That's Bubinga, and the top is Western Red Cedar.
Cedar, yeah.
I was wondering if it was cedar or not. I thought it was maybe like a torrefied spruce or something. But
I think on that one is the inner layer is spruce.
yeah, I could. Well, if that is the, like, you can see it if you look at the.
It's a
the
lighter
edge of it.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Like how the side port is more of like an observation port, so you can look at all the bracing and see how everything is constructed. It's really cool. It's always been cool. Wow, it's super warm. But
And we talked before about the cantilevered neck, and that one thing that I didn't mention then was that I think that does have value with this system, and maybe not so much tonal value with conventional bracing, but you're still getting some vibration in the upper part of the top, and I don't know if you can actually pick this up. If you do that to an instrument with conventional transverse braces, the top stops having resonance below the lower brace, and so the
Yeah, I understand.
So there's
Also,
more
with
area.
like humidity changes and stuff, sometimes you can get a tongue rise if the body comes up. So yeah, there's definitely although we did have one compass rose where like there was a vibration that started from the tongue touching the top at some point, you know.
yes.
So
And that
you know.
may be why, I'm just guessing here, but when I say that I had that one with the really, really hefty upper brace with the carbon fiber on the underside surface, that may have been an experience that he had, and that he used that heavy brace as compensation.
Right.
I don't know. We'll never know.
Right.
but-
Yeah, no,
but-
good call.
When I looked at that brace, I was really pretty surprised, because it was,
No, but a lot of people do try to stiffen up a lot right there because I mean, that whole region next to the neck, where the neck and the body come together, the strength is very important. And yeah, using the carbon fiber rods going down into the sides the way that you're doing it is like, first time I saw it, I'm like, what the heck?
yeah.
You know, like, oh, this is awesome. So yeah, I totally get it. It's it's a cool design. Looks cool too.
Yeah, and I take no credit for that. It's all to Rick Taylor, who was a very inventive guy, tried a lot of things, and was really successful in what he did for his career, which was to make instruments and...
Rick Taylor, did you say?
No, excuse me.
Okay, yeah. Turner, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend named Rick Taylor, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rick Turner.
Yeah, I got you.
Bob Turner. No, I'm sorry.
It's the mashup. Yeah.
Brilliant people, though.
All right, Corey, give us a sample on that guy. So this is the same 18-inch scale tenor,
Yes.
tuned down a step.
Really warm. Sheesh. There's a lot of sustain, which makes it easy to do those. Just let the chords ring out and everything. You can add a lot of space in between melodies, which is one of the favorite things. One of my favorite things about playing Ono ukuleles. Makes it easier to play because you don't have to worry about making it sound good. Everything just sounds good, and you can add a little bit more depth to the piece you're playing. You can do a lot more than an instrument that doesn't sustain as much as this one. Yeah.
And then 16-inch scale, right?
This one is really impressive too for the size. You get the same effect. It's a concert, but I mean it's a very big sound. I don't really play concerts, but this is really comfortable, especially with the longer scale length. You can feel, especially with it's a small difference compared to a 15-inch scale length, but because I have larger hands and I'm used to playing a tenor, this makes it a lot more comfortable compared to playing a standard concert ukulele. Yeah, I can do that.
And thanks, Corey. I have to tell you, it's really rewarding to me to hear you play that.
That. Thank you. Thank you for, letting us handle your instruments and sell them and, be a part of your ukulele world. It's the same thing with the tenors on here. I was playing it really lightly, and it sings. It's one thing I like about, or one thing I look for in an instrument is how well it can sing, and this one does extremely well. So thank you.
Thank you.
We love you, David. The ukulele community appreciates you, and we hope to see much more coming our way. So keep at it.
I will.
Have fun on Maui.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon. Aloha.
And thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, David.